Okay, everybody, my name is Joshua the Jeweler, and today we're going to be making a ring out of this old silver Walking Liberty $half. So we're going to begin by punching a hole. This is a 1/2 inch hole punch, and we are using an auto-centering die that has interchangeable punches for different sized coins. This die has a cone shape on the inside of the top part, so that when you screw it down, it centers the coin in the die, giving you a perfectly centered mark, or hole rather, in the center of the coin. I'm going to be using a 2-pound brass mallet. The brass mallet is good for two reasons. Number one, it has a deadened blow, so you're less likely to get a bouncy strike. And two, it is softer than the steel tool, so it reduces the amount of wear and tear on your tools and is unlikely to break your tools. All right, so as you can see, it only takes a few strikes. There's no need for a hydraulic press. All right, and there we have it. A nice hole punch. I'm going to use the top of this die and a rubber mallet to just hammer that punch out of the coin. Now, ordinarily I might use a separate soft tool like a piece of wood or something to hammer that out of there, but for the sake of getting this on camera, we're just going to use this method here. And that works. We've got it off. And we're also going to remove that slug from the inside of there so I can use that for a later project. And there we have it. So the next step is to remove the flashing on the inside of this coin. And to do that, we are going to be using a deburring tool. You could also use a file or sandpaper or, a Dremel tool, anything like that. But you want to make sure that you get a really rounded edge on the inside of here. The reason for that is because if you have a sharp edge, that sharp edge is going to get extremely thin as we get to the next stretching stage. And that thinness is going to result in work hardening and cracking. All right, now we're going to fold the coin. To fold the coin, I use a dapping block. A dapping block is, honestly, it's way cheaper than the 45-degree cone dies you can get from coin ring suppliers. And I just find that it does a great job. You don't need expensive tools for this part of the process. I'm also using a nylon punch, a dapping punch that I got off Amazon, and just a 1-ton arbor press. And you will see I've modified this arbor press with a ratcheting system that makes it a lot easier to work with. So we're just going to press this down. It's in the largest hole of this 2-inch dapping block. Maybe the second largest hole. I forget now. And we got it a good ways down, but now that it will fit in the next smaller hole, we're going to press it one more time just to get as much movement done in this die as we can before moving on to the ring stretcher. So one more press should do it. By the way, it really doesn't matter what size dapping punch you use, as long as it's smaller than the outside of the coin and bigger than the inside of the hole. Here's a close-up just to show you where we're at this stage of the process. You're not going to get as complete of a fold with this method as you might using the coin ring dies that are specifically made for folding coins, but it's really not that important to get a perfect fold. You'll be stretching this coin out on the ring stretcher either way, so the rest of this process can be done using a ring stretcher and other dies for forming the coin. So now we're going to be annealing this. As you work the ring, it gets harder and harder and more brittle. So this annealing process softens the coin and allows it to be manipulated again without resulting in cracking. So what I am doing here is I am heating this up until it glows just slightly red, and then I will quench it in water and it will be annealed. There we go. It is fully annealed at this point. All right, so I'm using some blue shop towels and just pressing them up inside the coin there to give it a little bit of softness between the ring stretcher, which I'm going to be using to stretch out the inside of that coin And during this process, I'm going to be stretching it out maybe maximum of about 2 sizes. And then once I get to about 2 sizes, then I'm going to anneal it again. Now, I'm not going to show you in this video every single annealing that I do, because if you've seen one annealing, you've seen them all. So we're going to keep stretching this up. And I'm really going by feel here. When it starts to show some resistance, and when it starts reaching the size differential of about 2 sizes, that's when I know it's time to stop and anneal again. All right, so we're annealed just then, and we're going to stretch it again. My target size for this ring is a size 11, which is pretty big for a coin ring. Now, I can get these up to about a size 14 without any problems, and potentially even bigger, although I generally don't size much bigger than a size 14 for $50 anyway, because your metal starts to get pretty thin at that point. So one thing to watch out for when you're stretching is every coin has a slightly different shape to it on the face. And because of that, it's going to have a variation in thickness all the way around. And so as you're stretching it, that metal is being pulled from various parts of the coin in order to stretch out. And what's going to happen is that the metal is going to be thinner in some places more than others. And that's going to create some kind of waviness to the coin ring as you're stretching it. And so you just want to be mindful of that through this process. The more often you anneal, generally speaking, it helps to reduce that strain that happens on the coin. But when you're stretching up to a large size like this, there's going to be some unevenness, a little bit of waviness that happens. And I will show you later on some things that we can do to help correct that. So again, we've just annealed, and we're getting close to the end here of where we're going to stop. And next we're going to move to the Swedish wrap die. Now, I realize that a Swedish wrap die is not the cheapest thing in the world to buy, but honestly, for this style of coin ring, I really think they are pretty essential for making a high quality ring at the end of it. Now, it is possible that using the coin folding dies that they make would speed up this process of stretching, but as you can see, it really doesn't take that long to get up to a nice big size. We're actually over a size 11 at this point. So here's what it looks like after stretching. As you can see, the outside of the ring is still bigger than the inside, so we need to squeeze that down somehow. This is where we're going to use the Swedish wrap dies. Now, I'm using the same paper towel to wrap around the coin. And the reason I do paper towels is because it really saves a lot of money. And what I mean is that a lot of people will use just Teflon tape. And Teflon tape, you have to use tons and tons of it if you're only using Teflon tape to get a protective layer. So adding just a single strip of paper towel is extremely more protective than Teflon tape. And then you just wrap 2 or 3 layers of Teflon tape around the paper towel, and that's all you need to make your die, your coin ring slippery for the Swedish wrap dies. So you just want to make sure that every part of the coin is completely wrapped with both the Teflon tape and the paper towel. You don't want any exposed coin edges here. This is very important. Anything that's exposed will get damaged during this process. This is just a steel block to hold the Swedish wrap die. And my wrap dies are made by a company called Coin Ring Tools. And I really like these dies. They work really well. They're less expensive than Jason's works, but they work extremely well. They're nicely polished inside, and I really like these tools. Here is a close-up of that for you. You can see how the coin sits in there nicely, and I am putting it with the reeded side down to begin with. And it has these lovely little nylon pushers one thing I like about these nylon pushers is you can only push them so far before they stop. And then it gives you increments where you can kind of judge, for example, what size is the coin when you stop at that increment, right? And when this is fully annealed, this is not difficult to push at all. If you're having trouble pushing your Swedish wrap dies, then something is wrong. Either the Teflon tape has come loose, or maybe you're using too small of a punch and it is twisting in the die. So if you're having trouble pushing down with a 1-ton arbor press, then that's a problem. So this is what it looks like after we've pressed down the reeded edge. And you can see before the reeded edge was wider, now the reeded edge is actually smaller, right? Because we've pressed it down from that end. Okay, I'm going to anneal it at this point, and then we'll rewrap it and we'll press it some more. And at this point, what I am striving to do is just to straighten out the walls of the coin. All right, so we have annealed this, and we're going to press it one more time to start straightening out the walls. And you'll notice here I am now flipping the coin over. So you'll see the reeded edge is now sticking up in the die, and I'm just going to press it down to the same, till that same punch bottoms out, and then we'll have perfectly straight walls. And actually, I think I decided here that I was going to push it down a little bit further because it wasn't quite looking straight enough to me. So we've actually pushed it down to the very bottom of that die. And then we'll flip it one more time just to make sure that the walls are straight and push it down all the way again. There we go. And again, if you're having trouble removing your coin from the Swedish wrap die, something's going wrong. It should not be hard to remove from the die. So either you are not wrapping your coin properly or it's getting twisted. Here's what it looks like at this point. Now at this point we have a serviceable coin ring, but it's not the right size. Okay, so we are about roughly a size 9. This mandrel happens to be, around a size 10. This mandrel happens to be a little bit undersized, so it measures smaller than it actually is. So we're going to stretch this up. Now, when stretching these out, my target here is to actually get about 2 sizes above the final size that I want for the coin ring. And then, because as we stretch it, it's going to get a little bit wonky in shape. And so the stretching is just going to make slightly uneven in the sides. The reason for this is because the inside of that coin has stretched out to such a degree that it's gotten a lot thinner. And so creates a cone shape on the inside of the coin when you stretch it out like this. And I prefer for the coin ring to be straight walled when it's finished. So by stretching it oversized, we can then put it back in the Swedish wrap die and press it down and straighten out those walls and get a perfectly straight and pristine looking coin ring by the time we're done. Now at this stage, I am going to be flipping the coin back and forth as I am stretching it. This is to help reduce the amount of stress on the coin. If you just stretch from one direction, even when you're annealing, it will overstress that one side. So what you want to do is you want to stretch it, flip it over, stretch it again, then anneal it, then repeat that process. And we're also only stretching maybe one size at a time, maybe not even a whole size at this point, because we don't want to overstress the coin ring. If you've overstressed your coin ring, you'll know it, because either on the thinner edge of the ring, you'll start to see cracks, or maybe there will be one spot that is a lot thinner and is starting to separate. You also might notice on the face of the coin that certain details of the coin are actually pulling away and cracking on the edges, not on the edge of the coin, but on the actual face where the details are. The details are actually cracking off. So those are signs that you've overstressed your coin ring. To some extent, these coins are old. They've seen a lot of wear and tear. It's also possible that there is some imperfection in the coin from the mint. So no coin ring is going to be 100% perfect every time. And you have to acknowledge that when you're making them in this process and realize that the end result is what matters, and you want to get the best result possible with what you're working with, but nothing is ever going to be 100% perfect. Okay, so we've gotten up to that 2 sizes over. We're at about a size 13 now. And this is a fun technique that I've figured out, is if you have an arbor press like this one, you can actually mark the ramrod on your arbor press with a metallic Sharpie marker. And then you have a marking when you are pressing your coin ring down to gauge how far you're actually pressing. And you can actually judge how much size you are reducing the coin ring by just squeezing just down to that mark. This is important when it comes to getting a precise size, as well as repeating the position when you're not quite at the bottom of one of your punches. You can move the ram to that exact position after flipping your coin over in your die, and you'll know that the walls are perfectly straight because you've pushed it down to the exact same point. Okay. So there you can see that it is perfectly straight. So we're just going to unwrap this and check the size of it real quick. And I'm only partially unwrapping this to check the size. Sometimes you can reuse your wrap between pushes as long as you've got enough annealing left in that coin, which I do at this point. I've only pushed it down a very small amount. And I'm checking to see the size because as I'm pushing this down, I am pushing it down with the reed side down. And the reason I start with the reed side down is because that is where the size is measured from. Once I get that side to the right size, then I will check it in my arbor press where it's sitting, and then I will flip it over and I will press down the arbor press to reach that target size so that we get those perfectly straight walls we're going for here. Okay, this had a good bit farther to go than I anticipated when I was making it. So I checked it a few times, probably more than I needed to. But it's better to check more often and get the right size. But one cool thing is when you are pressing the reed side down, if you go too low and you make it undersized, as long as you haven't pressed the other side yet, you can take it to the ring stretcher and stretch it out until it reaches the appropriate size on the ring stretcher. Then all you have to do is sit it back in the die and measure using the Sharpie where it's sitting at. Then pull it back out of the die, flip it over, and press it back down one more time, and you've straightened out those walls. So I am showing you the whole process here. That's why this is a little bit of a tedious video. You're actually seeing the entire thing except for a few annealing steps. Okay, a lot of annealing steps. And if it looks like I keep putting this coin back in here with the same wrapping, just realize that I am skipping those annealing steps. So you may not necessarily see me rewrapping the coin every single time. But generally speaking, when you get to this stage where you're just fine-tuning things, you can press it back in the die a few times over without changing out your wrapping. You just want to make sure that the wrapping material hasn't torn anywhere. If the wrapping material starts to tear, it needs to be redone, because there's just no way that that is going to protect the coin. And if you push it with a tear in the wrapper, you will damage the writing on the coin. Okay, here we are. And we have gotten very close to the target size. We are about a quarter size under size 11 here. So I will tweak this a little bit more, and then we'll be good to go. Notice here as I'm spinning this that you will see some unevenness in the thickness. And this is what I was talking about. When you're stretching the coin ring, it's pulling that metal from various parts of the coin. Also, if for any reason your center punch was not perfectly centered, that will also result in an uneven thickness of the, an uneven width of the coin ring. So I'm just going to tweak this up just a smidge to get the size that we need here. And when you're going up just a quarter size or so, it doesn't really affect the straightness of the walls too terribly much. So here we are. We've got a good looking coin ring there. So now I'm going to sand off the outer edge. If there were any small cracks or anything like that, you want to get rid of them at this stage. Hopefully there are no cracks. If they're very minor, you might be able to sand them out and it'll be okay. But you do want to polish off this surface and get it nice and smooth and clean looking. It makes for a much more professional looking ring when you have a flat sanded surface on this end. Now I'm going to measure around this ring so you can see the difference in thickness. So it varies from about a 9 millimeters wide over on this side, and on the other side it's actually significantly thinner. It's about almost 8.4 millimeters there. So that's a pretty significant difference in width. So what I'm actually going to do is I'm going to file down the higher side of this coin ring with a file just to get that straightened out, because you will notice it when it's finished if it's not even. And I really prefer my customers to have a nice even coin ring, even if it takes a little bit of extra time and effort to do. These details are what make your work stand out, is when you take the time to straighten things out, to get things even. This helps to establish better craftsmanship. So we're just going to check this periodically to make sure that we are getting to the right size here. And my tolerance here is about 0.1 millimeters is what I'm shooting for of difference between the two sides. If things are within 0.1 millimeters, then it's a lot less noticeable and it's going to look very professional. You could go to a higher degree than that if you want to, but I generally just shoot for what's noticeable. All right, 8.5, 8.5, 8.5. All right, so between 8.5 and 8.4, we should be good at this point. So now we're going to sand this smooth, get rid of those file marks we put in there, and we will also take our deburring tool and smooth out the inside of that edge there. Again, you can use any number of tools to finish the ring at this stage. You can use sandpaper, you can use a Dremel tool with polishing bits. Whatever works for you, go ahead and use it. I'm just using some hand tools here that are fairly simple. I do often use rubber wheels and other finishing tools for my final finish of these rings. All right, and we're just going to put some steel wool on here just to give it a rough finish. I'm not going to go through my full patinaing process and finishing. We're just going to show you what the ring looks like at this point and call it good. This is a perfectly sellable ring in its current condition once we're done with this shining stage. You could definitely go to any market and sell the heck out of these. They are very beautiful, lovely coins. These old Walking Liberty half dollars are very popular coin rings, and I recommend buying the ones that are of a slightly higher quality. Obviously, you don't want to bring anything that's like super collectible, but for the Walking Liberty halves, you really want something that has legible writing, and you can see some of the stars and the details in the lady's dress. It'll just stand out so much better in the finished product. You don't have to get something that is, barely uncirculated, but you can get something that is at least decent. If you find coins that have been harshly cleaned and are not quite as collectible, those are the best ones to work with because they're a little bit cheaper. I'm just going to shine up the reeded edge here. And there we go. We have a finished coin ring. Beautiful little coin. I love this design. It's such a great classic Liberty design. This design started in 1916 and went all the way through I believe 1947. So this coin was the coin that was being produced during World War I and World War II. And it's just kind of an interesting piece of history there, that just thinking about what these coins might have lived through and what they represented to people at the time. I mean, such a beautiful coin. And it was used in everyday transactions. So there you go. I hope you enjoyed.